Yeah. Good morning, folks. For those folks who have signed in, we'll start in another minute and a half or so. Thanks for your patience. Wait for a few more people to sign in, then we'll jump right in. All right, folks, let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where you are in the world today. My name is Todd Feinroth, and I run sales for Amplication. I'm based in Seattle, Washington, and I want to welcome you all to our very first Amplication Enterprise Edition webinar. I'm really excited to have you all attend. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll be sharing thoughts on the challenges that many developers like yourselves are facing when building Node.js apps. And we'll demonstrate, Application Enterprise Edition and how it makes the lives of developers much better. So I'm going to start by introducing our speakers this morning. Michael Solati is our Developer Relations Manager based in the Bay Area, and Yuval Hazaz is our CEO and founder. So a quick review of the agenda. Before we get started, Yuval will cover some information about our company background. And then to frame up the rest of the session, Michael will share with us these common challenges that developers are facing and wrestling with when building Node.js apps. And next, we'll introduce the application solution. And then Michael will give us a guided tour of the product. And then towards the end of the session, Michael and Yuval will answer as many questions as we can in the remaining minutes of the session. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Yuval. Yuval, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Todd. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for everyone who joined. Quick background about Amplication before we go and dive into the actual demo. So Amplication is an open source company, meaning the product is an open source product built with the help of the community. We have thousands of stars and community members and hundreds of contributors in the project, but Amplication is also a commercial company. So we founded a company in Tel Aviv almost 2 years ago. We are already 18 employees working globally, not only in our offices in Tel Aviv. We have employees in India, in the US, in Europe. At this point, we raised already $9 million in funding, working on our business solution. A little bit about the vision of Amplication and how we started. So basically, I'm a developer. I've been a developer all my life, and I'm started working on Amplication as an open source project just to solve the actual problem I used to deal with as a developer, as an engineering manager. And the idea is to allow developer to focus on what matters, to focus on the value instead of wasting time on repetitive coding and undifferentiated heavy lifting. So Amplication allows developer to run really fast and do the important stuff, but without losing the customization and scalability that they need in order to build core products. So this is where we are right now, and we'll let Michael to show the product and allow you to understand how you can use it in your organization to be more productive with better quality, better standardization. So the stage is yours, Michael.
Thank you, Yuval. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Solati. I am Amplication's one and only developer advocate. And I'll just say a big part of my role is empowering developers to make amazing experiences. At the end of the session, we're going to be doing a kind of Q&A session. So please note at the bottom of your Zoom screens, you should see a Q&A button where you can ask all of your questions. We're going to do our best to get through all of them at the end of this, but maybe we'll answer some of your questions while we go through the product demo and stuff like that. So before I get started, I'm just going to ask one question to all of you right now, and that's, before this session, how familiar were you with Amplication? And we'll give you guys about 30 seconds to answer this, and then we'll move forward. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So let's talk about developers' challenges. And keeping it simple, building a backend from scratch isn't easy. There are a lot of pain points, and that can end up becoming a real thorn in the side. So what are some of the dilemmas developers have to deal with? One common one is security. How do you handle security? Does your application require authentication to access data? What if the same data can be accessed from multiple entry points? Is each entry point secure? Then you have concerns with database connectivity. Once you've decided what database you want your application to use, how do you communicate with it? Do you use your own database connector and write more complex code to map out your data? Do you use an ORM, something that can map out your data for you and make objects that are easy for you to understand? Then there's libraries. Are you sure you're using the most reliable libraries out there? As of June 2022, NPM, I think, said that they were hosting close to 1.3 million packages. And obviously, it's grown since then. So do you really want to go through all of them to make sure you're using the best tools for the job? Documentation. APIs are all fine and good, but it's up to developers to document them. And I'm not sure how many developers like to write documentation, let alone keep it up to date. And then there's just large code bases. As a project expands, consistent coding patterns are key. Being able to navigate through a large project can be tedious. And when things aren't written consistently, it can be jarring and confusing to developers. And there's a lot more. Honestly, talking from personal experience at least, developers have a lot of things that they have to contend with when building something. So these are some of the pain points that we are trying to solve at Amplication. A lot of us are developers as well, and so we get the struggle, and we have a lot of ways that we think that we can help. So what does Amplication do? Amplication generates production-ready, self-documenting GraphQL and REST API endpoints, all for all of your data models. And you can do this with some of the most popular database options in the market. That includes Postgres, MySQL, and MongoDB. Your APIs are generated with authentication and authorization baked in. It does all of this using modern, trusted tools that are used by massive tech companies. We actively work on this in the open source, as our project is open source. If you have a question on how something is generated, you can always look at the code. And most importantly, you own your code. There's no black box. You're not locked into some ecosystem that's difficult to leave. You can do anything and everything with the code that we generate for you. Application generates code with some amazing tools. We use Nest.js, and this is our framework for building efficient, scalable Node.js server-side applications. We use Prisma, and this allows us to run CRUD commands against your database with ease and kind of secure and consistently. We use Apollo, which is our middleware for GraphQL, so you can easily generate your GraphQL endpoint. We use Swagger. Swagger exists to be able to visualize, document, and test your REST APIs. We use Passport.js to handle authentication securely, and we generate all the code with TypeScript rather than vanilla JavaScript. And that kind of allows for type checking during the development process. So you can quickly stub out your backend and use it right away. Building a project on GitHub, cool. Sync your application backend with a pull request to your GitHub repo. You own your code at the end of the day. If you need to make changes to it, you can. You want to run it on GCP, AWS, Azure, or anywhere else? Go for it. You're not locked in any way, which is kind of a beautiful thing. So why use Amplication? Well, we generate enterprise-grade production code with readiness and scale in mind. We support microservice and monolith architecture, and we provide a scalable platform supporting multiple projects. Fast development cycles are also really important to us. So we've automated the creation of all of our core functionality, and we provide continuous GitHub sync. Increased developer productivity and efficiency is important, so we have monorepo and polyrepo support, an intuitive console for improved developer experience. And we've done all this based on the most adopted security, performance, and best practices that exist right now. Flexibility, and we provide flexibility to build any service. We provide highly customizable code. We provide modular code generation, and we have a plugin ecosystem, which allows you to just update your code, like switching a database or an authentication module with just the click of a button. So considering all of that, I guess I have one more question for you guys. And that's, what functionality does your development team think would improve their workflow? We're going to let this one sit for just a little bit longer to make sure everyone has the chance to answer. And it gives me a chance to drink some more coffee. Okay, I think that's that. So, you've heard a lot about what we can do, but I think what's really important is to show what we can do. So we're going to get started and build something together. And we're going to start our adventure on the application website by clicking the Start Now button on the top right. This will take us to our login screen, and you're able to log in easily with GitHub. Now for this, we're actually going to be greeted with my personal workspace, but we're not going to work in here. So we're going to create a new workspace. And I would say workspaces are kind of like organizations on GitHub, if you want something to relate this to. So we'll create a new workspace for this webinar. And the new workspace has a sample project by default. And we're going to actually use the sample project to showcase what Amplication can do. I think the first thing that any project needs is a service. A service is a Node.js application, and a project could host multiple services, each with their own set of tasks. So let's get started with adding our service. I'm going to click the add resource to add a service resource. And you'll see by default, Amplication will generate a GraphQL endpoint as well as REST API endpoints documented with Swagger. Also, application can generate an admin panel, which is super easy and super useful. I'm going to check out the entities the application generated based off of this sample project. And this is all designed for a commerce store. So you'll see things like address, customers, products, and orders, everything we need. I'm just going to jump into the settings for the service, and I'm going to rename it from sample service to e-commerce service. I think that works here. Okay. So that was the basics of creating an application with Amplication. But the service isn't all that helpful if it just lives on our servers. We're going to next link this project to GitHub in order to sync our code straight to there. On the left-hand side, I'm going to click the GitHub logo to get to our GitHub sync settings. And I'm going to install the GitHub app to my GitHub organization, which I think is Application DevRel. So this will take a sec. Application can sync code to an existing repository. But for the sake of this demo, we're actually going to create a new repository. So give me a second to do that. So we'll call this repo e-commerce. So Application actually created this repo for me. And if I go to the GitHub, I can see that there's now an empty repo for the e-commerce demo. With our GitHub repo linked up, pushing code is as simple as the click of a button. I'll click the commit changes and build button. And here we can see a new build happening. I'll click into the build information, and that way we can view the logs to see the process of Application building the application. This will take about a minute. Awesome. At the bottom of the screen, there's the Open with GitHub button, and I'll click that, and that'll take us straight to the pull request that Application created for the project. You'll see that there's about 340 files created, and this is both for the admin UI that we generate as well as for our backend server. If I scroll through this, you'll see there's a lot of files created, so I'm not going to go through all the files individually, but we're going to just merge this pull request into our repo. Give me a second for that to load. Let's merge. And now if I go to the home of the repo, you can see the new files added to the repo. So this might be a lot to take in right away. It doesn't seem like a lot, but in a matter of minutes, we built and pushed to GitHub a complete backend. For a lot of teams, just a task like that can take up to a week. So we're going to pause and let me just ask, when coding tasks, what coding task takes the most time for you guys when beginning a new project? We'll give you guys about 30 seconds for that question. All right, thank you, everyone. So that was just one backend. But like I mentioned, Application supports microservice architecture. So we're going to get started and create a new service. And this one could hypothetically exist just to sending emails to users. I'll go back into our project panel, and I'm going to add a new resource, which is going to be just a new service. It doesn't need to have much, so I'm just going to disable the GraphQL REST API stuff. And once that's created, we're just going to jump into the settings of the new service and give it an appropriate name, like email service. I mentioned before that Amplication supports polyrepo code bases. So I'm going to set up this new service to be synced into a separate repo from the e-commerce service that we created before. So here I'll go into the settings. I'm going to override the default settings and create a new repo. I'm going to commit and build the changes that we just made, which is primarily for this new service. This will take a moment. And if I go through the logs of the build for this email service, it's pushing up the changes to GitHub. And you'll see that it created a new pull request for the this email service. So we're just going to pop into the new pull request, review the file changes, and you'll see there's about 106 files for this email service. And that's pretty much all we need to create a new service. So we've set up two services for this project into two different repos. And this kind of showcases our polyrepo support. But sometimes it's just easier to have both projects in the same repository, which is still fairly straightforward to do. Now, if we were to merge both services into the same repository, both services will be saved into the same directories, which is admin UI and server. So we're going to go into the settings of each service and set where we want the projects to be saved. We're going to use the recommended structure of packages, the service name, and then specifically what component of the service that is, which is either the admin UI or the server. So here you see me doing that for the e-commerce service. Nice. So let's go back to our projects panel, and we're going to do the same thing for our email service. But one small change that we do have to make for our email service is to disable the GitHub override settings. That way, instead of pushing the changes to the email service to its own repo, it's going to push the changes to the email service to the repository that we created for the e-commerce project. So we're going to set the base directory to packages email server. And I'm going to click the commit and build button, and it's going to build out both services and create pull requests for them on GitHub. I'll click open with GitHub on the bottom. And I'll see that I have some new pull requests. The first pull request I'm going to click into is for the e-commerce service. It looks like there's a lot of files that have been changed, but in reality, all that's happened is that the files have been moved to their new folders. So if you look at the changes, you can just see admin UI is now packages e-commerce admin UI, and so on for all the files. So let's merge this pull request in to make those changes for this service. And once that lands, let's go back to our pull request and look at the PR for the email service. Here, these are mostly new files. There's some rename issues, but I would ignore those because that's just like weirdness with Git. But we're going to review the changes and we're going to merge this pull request in. Now, if we go to the code page, we can see that there's now a packages folder. And if we click into the packages folder, we can see both of our services, e-commerce and email server. So here's all the new files created and the files that have been moved around as we expected. So far, we've seen how to spin up a service, sync our code to GitHub, split our project into multiple repos, and how to handle multiple services in one repository. But we pride ourselves in building an infinitely extensible platform. And one way we help developers build whatever they need is through our plugin library. By default, we build backends with Postgres, but not everyone wants to use some flavor of SQL. Let's instead update our e-commerce service to use MongoDB. We'll do that by first, we'll go back to our project page. We'll go into the e-commerce service, and we'll click the plugins button on the left side panel. Here, you can see a bunch of different plugins that are available, but we're going to start by just clicking install for MongoDB. This does everything when it comes to configuring Mongo. So I'm going to click commit changes and build, give this a second. And just like that, MongoDB has been enabled. To show that to you, we're going to open this in GitHub, and we're going to review the code changes with this pull request by just installing the plugin. So this pull request updated roughly 7 files. A lot of it is just updating some configuration files and stuff like that. It updates the ORM to use MongoDB. It updates environment variables with the MongoDB environment variables. It updates the Docker file that we create for local development purposes. It handles everything. And so with the click of the button, you now have a new database. I will have to ask, how quickly have you been able to change a database in development before? This isn't a question you have to actually answer. Sorry, Saurav, I kind of jumped the gun there. But I just want to make a point that I doubt being able to switch databases has been as fast or as easy as just a click of a button. And it's not just swapping to MongoDB that we make super easy with our plugin ecosystem. We have a lot of different functionality or libraries that you can easily install and update all of your code base with just one click. So we're going to go back to that plugin page. And from here, you're going to be able to see all the plugins that we have. So give us 1 second. We're going to jump into the e-commerce service, click the plugins button. And so we have plugins available for MySQL, MongoDB, Postgres. If you want to enforce consistent formatting of your code, you can install Prettier. You can switch authentication strategies. We kind of provide it all. And for enterprise customers, we also offer the ability for you to have private plugins. So you're not, if there's something that you need that we don't currently provide, you have the ability to have a plugin available for all of your projects that can add that functionality for you. I'll admit, I know that I've went over a lot today, and that's still not everything that application is capable of doing. But I have one more question for all of you, and I promise this is the last one. At least I'm 90% sure that this is the last one. And so I'll ask, which application feature that you saw today or have heard about are you most excited for you and your team to use? Wonderful. So, like I said, that's a lot. And I know we've gotten a few questions, so we're going to get to those in a second. But I would like to invite Yuval back to join me, and we can try to field some of your questions. If you haven't had the chance to ask a question yet, feel free to drop it into our Q&A. But let's get started. Give me 1 second.
That was really great, Michael.
Thank you.
Even myself, I understand some of it. So well done.
I would hope you do. I would hope you do. So we have. Give me 1 second. I'm just reading through this question to make sure I understand it. So we have a question from a developer named Rajib. They say, I'm a Nest.js developer and I've built numerous REST APIs and GraphQL APIs, but I've always had to do a lot of tasks for the initial project setup. I hope this will help me for next time. I think that's what they, you know what? It's maybe not the most straightforward question, but I definitely hope that this sort of thing does help you out with next time. I will say, usually at the end of some of the presentations I give, I always open myself up for questions, comments, criticism, and praise. And I'd like to think this falls along the praise side of things. Thank you. All right, we got a question from Richard, and I think I'm going to field this to you, Yuval, since you're definitely the tech and the brains behind all of this.
Sure, I can take it. So Richard is asking, yeah, go ahead, read it.
No, okay. Richard is asking, is it possible to have a quick look into an initial custom private plugin?
So probably we will not go into creating custom plugin, but what we can do, if you'll just give me 1 second, I will open our repo where we hold our plugins, and I think we can do a quick overview of one of the plugins, just so we can show you how a plugin looks like. So let me share my screen. And let me know if you see that. And so basically, if you go to github.com/application/plugin, this is the repo where we save the code for the plugin we created. So it's all open source. You can see the plugin. You can just clone the repo and create more plugins if you want. So let's just open one of the plugins. Let's open the plugin for MySQL, for example, and let's look on what the codes include. So I will skip the basic Node.js packaging and stuff, and I will go directly into the actual code of the plugin. So there is one file called index.ts, and we see that the plugin itself is a code, TypeScript code, that implements the application plugin interface, which has one event or one function called register, when you can register to one of the many events, application expose, application data service generate or expose, into the process of the code generation. So each one of the events can get a function, a callback, and basically application during the generation process will just execute those functions, and it will expose in each one of the functions something called context, which includes all the things that the code generation are aware of during the generation, any files that were generated already, all the settings, plugins, anything else that is in the context, and everything is on our doc site. So you can easily go to the doc site and look on the details of each one of the events, the context, the event parameters. So for example, this one is before create server, we do some kind of testing right here. This event is just running some validation. And because MySQL does not support the multi-select option set, so we run a validation and throw an error. But let's look on this one before create server.env. We go and replace some of the values. So basically, there are different ways to use the custom code and plugins. It can be template-based, just maybe static file to replace, or you can actually use ASTs and code to write code and go into the detail of the plugin. At any case, I will invite anyone who wants to build plugins and try out the plugin to join our Discord server, where the engineering and the core team of our product are there, and they can help you and provide support if you need.
Awesome. Thank you, Yuval. I am going to throw another question your way, and this is from Dimitri, and he's asking about a payment integration. I'm going to make the assumption this is if they wanted a plugin for something like Stripe or Stig or something like that.
Yep. So let's start with the broader option. You can always use custom code. So application generate the basic structure, infrastructure, and anything that we support, you get the benefits of enjoying that. But once you want to do something that application does not support, you can always use custom code. But since integration to a payment system is something we usually heard of, and it's a question that is very common, you will probably see a plugin for at least the most common integration payments like Stripe or Paddle and stuff. So, and if you want, you can contribute, you can build a plugin once and contribute that back to the community. So this is one of the use cases, which is very good use case for a plugin. For now, it does not exist yet. So the either option, you either use custom code or you can build a plugin and share it with everybody so they can enjoy it.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to field the next two questions because I think they're ones I can handle, and they're ones I've actually actively worked on. So give me 1 second. So this is from two developers. The first one is, what about developing a UI if there's an integration with something like Angular? And then another developer asks is where they can find tutorials to learn more about Amplication. So when it comes to the UI that you guys are going to be using for the front end of your applications, we kind of leave that to you to create what you want. Because at the end of the day, we're helping you stub out the backend as quickly as possible. I think internally we've had conversation about building tools that make it more easy for front end developers to integrate with the backend, things like SDKs, but that's something down the road that we're discussing. However, for the Angular developers or people who want tutorials, if you go to our company website, amplication.com, go to the docs button here, tutorials over here on the left-hand panel, and you'll see that we have two different tutorials, one to build a to-do list with Angular and one to build a to-do list with React. So hopefully that kind of answers the question for if you wanted to tutorial, how you can build an application app. There you go. And more specifically, if you're interested in integrating Amplication with an Angular application, this will walk you through step-by-step on how to do that. So visit amplication.com, click the docs in the menu navigation, and that should get you going from there. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I
would maybe just add one comment on top of that, Michael, a little bit about the vision and the focus of Amplication. So 99% of what we focus on is the backend. We do generate very basic CRUD admin UI as a starting point for anyone who want to start using their API with no, it's not intended to be customer facing. It's very primitive and basic for CRUD operations. But eventually, the API we generate are standards API, Swagger, GraphQL. So you can use any client technology to connect to Amplication. It can be native apps, it can be Angular or React, or it can be any other thing you can use as a developer. I just want to share maybe a conversation I had just this morning with an Israeli startup working on some kind of UI, low code for UI. And it's based on declarative files that you declare the schema and it generates the UI. And they are interested in building a plugin that you will be able to just add a plugin to the code generation. We will generate all the UI in their schema. So the options are endless basically because we generate code and the code uses GraphQL, REST API, and standard technology. You can connect from any client technology and you have the freedom to do it regardless of the fact that you're using Amplication in order to generate the server.
So Yuval, we have a question from Hung, which is, other than code generation features, what makes Amplication stand out from other general or specialized content management systems?
Great question. So there are many different product and solution in the area or similar domains of what Amplication trying to do, CMS, headless CMS, backend as a service and stuff, low code tools maybe. And I guess each one of those categories or subcategories is intended for different use cases. So I would say that CMS is very good when you want to build something like a blog or website and you want to manage the content easily and allow marketers or product to change the design and stuff and so on. Backend as a service is maybe very good for other use cases where you want to really quickly build a prototype for your product, or you want to build something really simple or with a smaller scale and you don't care about customization and scale. What makes Amplication unique is the fact that we generate standard code based on open source technology that provides the developer full ownership and customization and scalability option to build core products. So the idea that application is not limited to just internal tools or just prototyping or just something in smaller scale. You want to build core products, and we already have customers and users that build core products for the organization with application. A product, they build it for building a startup, something that they wish would worth billions of dollars in the future, and they will definitely not build that in a place where it's vendor locked and they don't have the option to scale and so on. So you want to build microservice architecture with Kafka or any other queuing service in between. You want to use some other integration. You want to build something in scale. No problem. Application will allow you to do that.
Thank you, Yuval. Give me a second. Where did I put this? Awesome. So we have a question from Muhammad. Hello, is it possible to delete an application I've created before in Amplication? And I have great news. The answer is yes. That is a feature that I started working on in January. It landed maybe a week or two ago. So you can currently delete projects. But if you have other features you want to see, let us know, and they'll put me to work on it, and they'll put someone else to work on it. But we take feedback from the community, like really important. It's really important to us. So we work on features that is important to you guys.
Maybe just to add on top of that, or maybe just emphasize what you just mentioned. We are an open source product. The code is open source. The issues, our roadmap, everything we do is open and clear and transparent on GitHub. You are more than welcome to go and see what we are working on. If you want something to get more priority and you want to upvote for it, please do it. If you see something, or if you think about something that it's not on our roadmap and you want to add it, please open a feature request or report a bug. We are always happy to get those feedback. And this is what made us build a roadmap until now, and it's always great.
So we have a question from Abhi. Can we use Express.js with this? I'll try to field this one. Yuval, correct me if I'm mistaken. Presently, we don't generate code with Express.js. We generate the code with Nest. But in a sense, you could think of Nest as a wrapper for Express, just because it does use I believe, the Express HTTP framework under the hood. So if you need access to the Express code, theoretically, you can access it, but we don't generate the code exposing that by default.
That's 100% true. And maybe a few more words about a vision. Once again, we are right now very focused on Node.js ecosystem, and within the Node.js, we choose to work with Nest.js and Prisma for the core of what we generate. And this allows us to focus, to run fast enough, to provide depth and value to the users and organizations that already use application. As part of the vision, the idea is to be able to support any technology stack. So not only within Node.js, you want SJS or you want Express, that's fine. But not only that, you want Go, you want Python, you want .NET, no problem. In the future, this is something we will do. The platform is already built in a generic way where the generation engine is agnostic, and we can easily replace that and add more generation engines. But for now, just since we are really focusing on what we're doing, we chose to use this specific stack.
Okay. We are running short on time. There are 3 questions left. I am going to try to rapid fire through them, just so we can get through the remaining bits. So we have a question from Stephen. Are there any plans to integrate with AI technology? There was a conversation that took place literally yesterday that I shared with Yuval. So it's something we are discussing, and hopefully we'll have something to announce in the near future. Question from Asif. What about performance of the server in real time? I don't know if I quite fully understand that question, but Yuval, do you want to jump in for that one?
So I will just give, I would say, kind of a generic answer. So since we generate code and we generate code based on all best practices, we guarantee that you will have best performance. But eventually, since it's just code, it's up to you. You have the freedom, but with freedom comes responsibility. So we are not the runtime. We are just the design time. We generate the code. And eventually, you just need to make sure you are building and customize the code and deploying it in a way that follow best practices.
All right, thank you. And our last question, just because, like I said, we're running short on time and Todd's going to be upset with me, is Paul wants to know if sockets are currently supported. We do not currently support WebSockets, but I believe that is in our roadmap for upcoming features and functionalities we want to introduce. Now, before I pass it to Todd, and so Todd, please forgive me. I have just a few things I want to share real quick, and then we'll be moving along. So I just figured you guys might be interested in some of the results from the polls that we hosted throughout the session. In regards to what functionality does your development team think would improve their workflow? Like the biggest thing that's really important to you guys is more efficient development. That's roughly 50% of what you guys are looking for, followed by 30% looking for better tools and resources. And I think hopefully through what we've seen through this demo, you can see how Amplication can help address these concerns that you guys have. When it comes to what coding tasks take the most time for beginning a new project, about 2/3 of you said designing the architecture, which is something we do for you, and we do it consistently. So we provide consistently clean code and architecture. So give it a shot. You might really like what we're doing. And finally, which application feature are you guys most excited to use with your team? And the most popular response was 56% was easy integration with different tools and plugins. I think being able to just jump between different databases, auth strategies is super useful and super powerful, so it makes sense to me. Now, I am sorry, I did take up like almost all the time, but I'm going to pass this back to Todd. Todd, take it away.
Thanks, Michael. Great. Yeah, great questions, folks. Really appreciate all the engagement. If you, for those folks who would love to have, more private session, a private demo, and continue the discussion with our tech folks, feel free to reach out to us. Here's some contact information for myself and Brandon, who's our customer success manager. We would love to have another, more private session with the folks who are interested. So feel free to reach out to us. We can set up a demo or a technical workshop and so forth. And then finally, to end the session, for those folks who attended, we want to offer you a webinar coupon to our Pro plan. So if you go to our pricing page and look at the Pro plan edition, this is a coupon that's good for 7 days, and it's for 1 month free service on our Pro plan. So feel free to go to our pricing page and engage that. And we'd love to, again, have a conversation with the folks who would like to continue the discussion. So with that, we're a couple minutes over. We're going to end the session. I want to, again, thank you, everybody, for attending. Thanks for the great questions. Really terrific engagement.
Maybe just one last comment. I see a few more questions that we were not answered. So guys, we are available on Discord. We are available on email. Feel free to reach out. We would love to answer anything that was left unanswered. And thank you very much for joining.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and looking forward to continuing conversations. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thanks, everybody.